I had a food and beverage guy that had been with my father for 30 years. So there wasn't a whole lot of managing to do, but I
Right.
recognized that I needed to get that down and dirty experience. You can't read about it in a book.
Thanks so much for tuning in and welcome to the Moments That Matter podcast. I'm your host, Jason Crepero, CEO of Hover. And today we're going to do a deep dive with CEO of TPG Resorts, Mike Marshall. In this episode, we're on the Moments That Matter. We're going to do a deep dive into the pivotal moments that have shaped the journeys of exceptional and influential leaders. And in each episode, we explore these leaders and their unique stories, all of the individual moments that have made up their unique and defined path. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Awesome. For some of the listeners who may not know TPG, can you give them an overview of the type of resorts and also different facilities you have?
Yeah, so TPG is a part of the Prakachani Companies, which is a multifaceted real estate uh, venture. TPG Hotels and Resorts is primarily a management company. We manage about 35 properties that the Prakachani Company owns, plus we manage another 80 or so properties above that that are purely third-party management. So we're a company that manages everything from smaller boutique properties like 16 rooms up to 700 room hotels. So we are in 26 states at the moment.
Wow.
But we're you know we run the gamut of hotels that we manage, and as a third party operator you can't get yourself in a niche because certain investors might have different types of properties. So they might have a higher end property, but they might also own two economy segment hotels. Well, if you're going to be their management company, you got to be able to manage all three of those properties. So we don't get try to pigeon ourselves as to exactly what we're managing, but the fundamentals of hotel management are the same whether you're upscale or economy.
Awesome. Awesome. And you have marinas as well. Is that
We
correct?
do. We do. A
Awesome.
lot of the marinas that we manage are associated with hotel properties, but we do manage some marinas that are strictly marinas as well.
Is that something you've done historically, or is that just new to TPG when you went there?
Uh, in my previous company, we did it before because there are a lot of hotel resort type of hotels that have marinas.
Right.
And so it was kind of an offshoot. Jim Procacciani recognized that, especially during the pandemic, that a lot of people that owned marinas were really mom and pop operators, and they were getting older in age, and their children did not want to continue the family legacy. So, but it, but they wanted to still own the real estate. So
Awesome.
we do the third party side, and at the same time, we've purchased marinas as well. And
Fantastic.
in the marina business, because it was so mom and pop oriented, they never had the sophistication of revenue management that we've learned. I mean, the hotel business learned that from the airline business. So we always copy each other. It just takes some industries a little farther or a little longer to figure it out. So in the marina business, you're selling footage, linear footage for a dock. And then what happens is you've got seasonal placeholders, and let's say they're going on a 2 week cruise. Well, hey, while your boat's going, let me rent out your slip to somebody else, and I'll split the revenue with you.
Mm.
So it maximizes revenue for the marina operator, but it also helps offset some of the expenses for the boat slip renter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And reading about you, and you sold your company to TPG, is that correct?
That is correct.
And it sounds like this has been your life's work, is working in and on hotels for the vast majority of your life. Is that right?
Yeah, I started as a dishwasher at the local Holiday Inn when I was 15 years old.
That's awesome. So how we talked a little in the pre-show just about the opportunities that are out there and how the mobility is there, the upward mobility, if folks want it in this industry. That's you coming in 15 years old as a dishwasher. How quickly, being in the industry before you realized, I might be able to do this. I might be able to climb. I'm taking on more responsibility. People are seeing some potential in me. How fast did you see that hard work garnered some attention and mobility?
It took a little longer for me. I'll relate what's happened with my son in a moment, but again, starting at 15, I was just looking for a summer job, and but I actually worked all through high school as well. So I would be the dishwasher on Friday nights and Saturday nights, and then I was the omelet cook on the Sunday buffet station on Sundays, which was great because I didn't have to go to church. So not that that's a good thing, but
I know, right?
I was able to make my car payments all through high school, and then even in college, I would spend summers working in the industry, and whatever money I made was my spending money for the rest of the year. But as I graduated college, I recognized that the industry was changing. My father started Marshall Hotels or Marshall Management at the time in 1980. And there were very few third-party management companies at the time. Mostly the hotel investors were hiring Marriott or Hilton or Holiday Inn to
Mhm.
manage their hotels, or they were trying to do it themselves. And just as time has evolved from 80 on, it grew more and more prevalent. So by the time I graduated college in 86, I could see that there was a potential career path for me just because the industry was growing in that way. Where when I was in high school, you had one hotel on every corner. Well, 10 years after graduating from college, there's four hotels on every corner. Now there's eight. So
Yeah.
the industry itself has totally grown by leaps and bounds in all different sorts of, I mean, you've got the staycations, you've got the yurts experience, there's so many different things that are out there that are associated with hospitality and travel that it's opened a lot more doors for people to become accessible to it. And it's also spawned a huge industry outside of things like with tech, with what you do, and insurance, and lending, and there's just so many different
Oh
aspects
yeah.
to it. I have a niece who is now working as an analyst for a big hotel real estate company. You know, I don't know that she would ever thought doing that, but she grew up around the family, and it's a family business.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize how big, especially when we talk about the market, travel and hospitality, it's certainly where you're going to stay, but it's how you're going to get there, how you're booking, right? The tools to actually book, and then what we're going to do there, different tours and, museums, botanical gardens, zoos, we like SeaWorld, Harlem Globetrotter, all the entertainment as well, all lumped into this travel. It's pretty vast.
But and don't forget your government involvement as well,
Mm,
because every time you stay in a hotel, you're paying an occupancy tax. That occupancy tax goes to a local DMO or a local county, local city, and they have somebody on their staff that is help overseeing those funds and marketing the local community or the local assets. So it's far reaching. Um, that it's
yeah.
just not the people that work on the train or on the plane or in the hotel. It's there's so many other support people around it.
Yeah. That touches everything. So in your career, then you graduate college. What was one of those defining moments for you where your father has the company, maybe you worked somewhere else, but with him. At what point was it the defining moment where you said, I think I'm good at this. I like to do it. I want to go down this path for good.
So I worked um when I graduated from college, I spent the summer at the beach as a bartender. I then traveled to Europe on a cultural enrichment program for 2.5 months, which meant I was on the Euro pass. I came home 2 weeks early because I ran out of money. But then I worked as a carpenter building a hotel.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, I'm out there pounding nails in the snow. I remember hanging cedar shake on outside of a building, and I'm reaching into my nail pouch, and I don't know if I'm going to come out with zero nails, one nail, or four nails because I couldn't feel my fingers. And I realized then that, you know, I need to use my mind a little bit more. I'm
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the brawn for this operation, even though I can do it. I've done every aspect of the hotel business, including construction.
Yeah.
But I realized then that I needed to be a little more serious, and I thought that the hotel career would be good for me. So I went to work for a company. I could have gone to work for my father's company, but I needed to prove to myself and to the other people in the company that I didn't need his help, that I could make it on my own. So I went to work for a hotel in the DC market, and um, I had a boss that was, he was a guy that got there at 8, left at 4, had a key to the men's washroom. He never walked the hotel. You never saw him. He was the true executive, and I learned at that time how not to manage.
Mm,
I was learning the industry because I was actually doing it, but I recognized how the people were being treated and that it didn't feel like a hospitality family to me. So, and I tell people this all the time, and I've told my own kids this when they're in a what they perceive as a bad job, I tell them to stick it out because you're going to learn one way or another. You can learn
yeah.
just as much from a bad manager as you can from a good manager. So, but
I
you have
love
to
that.
you got to keep your mind open, and you have to recognize where the failings are and where you can make your own positive steps forward. But again, our industry is one where you've got to, the hotel industry, and I mean, the entire hospitality industry, in my opinion, you've got to get in there at the ground level. You've got to work it because you have to deal with the day-to-day interactions of the customer.
Yeah. 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 Well, your point is so well received on my end. You know, when I've worked for people in the past, you see certain situations unfold. Such golden opportunities. We have a younger audience too for Moments That Matter, some college students. It's not all about, hey, I had great leaders. Sometimes it's about finding out who you don't want to be, what you don't want to become, the types of behaviors that you want to avoid. And so I always, when I mentor folks, I say, imagine you have a toolkit. No pun intended to your nail analogy, but imagine you have a toolkit and you're around good people and they're motivating and they're achieving results. Some of the attributes you like, put them in your toolkit. Others that you see, shed them. You don't have to bring everything from everybody that you meet. Since sometimes, even career choices, just trying to figure out, hey, I like this experience. I might want to double down in the future. I might want to go into this, but a lot of times, like for me, I wanted to be a lawyer in high school, and I went and I found out after shadowing for one day how ridiculously boring it was being in a law office, and I was able to rule that out. Just say, hey, I don't want any part of this.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
told my mother I was going to go to law school, and that didn't happen. My
Well,
sister
what I
went,
liked
and a
was
daughter went. So there's plenty. We got plenty of attorneys. We didn't need any more.
what I liked was I was president of a mock trial,
Hmm.
and you're given a case, and you got to take a side, and you do a ton of research, and then you go and you debate, and that was always fun. And then you go and shadow these people, and they're like, "Oh, here we got to file this deposition. We got to talk to this client." And I'm like, "Yeah." So you're not really debating things. You're not like a high level prosecutor or defense attorney. It's more about the paperwork. So I learned very early on that something I liked to do, but one side of it, not the full side of it.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
Awesome. So you decided to go to a different company other than the one that your dad, your father, founded. What
I,
was the sentiment there from him? Was he like, "Hey, I think it's great that you're going on your own," or did he actually want
no,
you
he
to
thought it was
incubate
great.
from within?
He thought it was great that I was going out on my own. I'd worked for him for years. I mean, again, all through high school and then most summers during college. So I knew how he operated. I knew, how we operated as a company. But
Sure.
I think it was important for me to go out and see how other people operated. And I remember applying with, I mean, applied with Hilton and Marriott, the big boys at the time, and they'd look at me like, why are we gonna hire and train you when you're just going to go back and work for your father. I'm like, okay, good. Um, which was
So
never
they
my
knew. They
intent.
knew.
Well,
Okay.
but it was never my intent because I mean I grew up in Salisbury, Maryland, and I'm sitting in Salisbury, Maryland right now. But it was not a. I vowed to get out of here. I was going to leave the Eastern Shore, and
Hmm.
but eventually, after living in places like Chicago and Ann Arbor and Columbus, Ohio, and Washington, D.C., I said, you know what? Salisbury's not that bad a place. I can go water skiing every
Yeah.
weekend. I can go golf on one day. I can do this, that, and the other thing. Go hunting. It's just a slower pace of life, and we can still get stuff done here. So I needed to go out and you know figure that part out as well as to where I was going to live and settle down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, when you came back, then did you slide in at you earned your stripes, right? Elsewhere, came back and joined the family company, or did you start your own as well?
No, no, no. My father asked me to come back to be the general manager of the Comfort Inn in Salisbury, Maryland, which is a hotel that I helped construct. So I knew where
with
all
with
this,
with the with
yeah.
the hammer and nails. Okay,
So I knew where all the
gotcha.
skeletons were, literally, because I buried them in the walls. Um, but they needed he needed help. The company was growing. He had hotels in Michigan and Ohio and Illinois and North Carolina and a few other spots. So
Mm.
he was traveling, and he needed someone he could trust because that was the first hotel that he built and where he was a general partner on. Um, and
How did
then
you view that opportunity? Was it like, the Comfort Inn down here, where I grew up, or did you think, hey, this is my opportunity to shine?
you know, at that time, I mean, we're talking about the mid 80s, late 80s, there wasn't the delineation of the brands as much as there is today. Back then each brand had three or four different options. Now each brand
Right.
has 20 or 30. So they didn't, I mean, back then the Holiday Inn Priority Club program was the number one frequent travel program in the world. I mean, but that's back when you had the traveling salesman that would do the hub and spoke, where they'd go stay in one town, and then every day they'd get up and they go a half hour in one direction, north, south, east, west, and then just stayed in that one area. So it was a different time, and you didn't. I mean, the Hampton Inn brand didn't even start until I think '88 was the first one, and those were 11 and a half foot bays with exterior corridors. I mean, it
Mm.
was things have evolved quite a bit differently. But
Yeah.
so what happens? As a general manager opportunity, I wasn't happy where I was because again, as I said, I learned more about how not to manage. Um, so I jumped at it, and I just I got in there and I made a lot of mistakes that I learned very quickly from because I can work 18 hours a day. I can't work 24. So I would get in there and say, hey, man, you got to do it this way or you're gone. And people would leave. And I'm like, that's just stupid. Now I'm just working all the time. But,
Yep.
and
Made
then
those mistakes.
when I got into full service hotels, so the night auditor and the breakfast chef were always my best friends. Because if the breakfast chef didn't show up, that meant I got called and had to go in and cook
Mm.
breakfast. So I learned how to judiciously manage at that point because I was young and brazen and full of fire, and I I knew how things needed to be done. But people around me didn't know how things were. But I didn't know how to teach people then. I
Yeah.
was just more authoritative, said, "Hey, you got to do it this way or you're gone." So I evolved very quickly, and I only spent, I think, 6 months that property until I moved on to a full service property and became a regional manager for three hotels. Um, but and then even then I was offered I could stay where I was, or there was a hotel in Fredericksburg, Virginia that needed help and a hotel in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I knew I needed additional food and beverage experience. So I knew I needed to go to a full service hotel. So I ended up moving
Mm.
to Michigan for 16 months and ended up with a wife out of the whole thing. So
Well, when you say, definitely want to get to the wife piece. When you say you knew you needed food and beverage, that sort of that makes me think. So you wanted to be somewhere, and you knew there were certain skills and capabilities you had to acquire to get there. As
yeah.
you stood there, what did you ultimately want to be or do?
Well, ultimately, I wanted to be an operations guy, or at least I thought I wanted to be an operations guy, because I had done it for so many summers and weekends in high school, and um, but I also recognized that I had been surrounded by a lot of good, even when I was the general manager of the Holiday Inn. I had a food and beverage guy that had been with my father for 30 years. I had
Mm,
so there wasn't a whole lot of managing to do, nor was there a lot of learning to do um, in that F&B space. But I
right.
recognized as the management company that we were becoming, that I needed to get that down and dirty, back of the house experience in food and beverage, which I didn't have. And again, it comes back to you've got to do it. You can't read about it in a book. I
Right.
remember I remember one time I had a kid. He was graduating from Cornell, and we had an opening as a GM at a Holiday Inn. And he comes in. I said, "Okay, what kind of practical experience do you have?" Well, I was an intern at the Four Seasons in New York for 2 months. Okay, what else? Well, I'm getting straight A's. I'm at Cornell. I'm getting a restaurant degree. I'm like, yeah, but you have no idea who the Holiday Inn customer is or how to run a hotel. I mean, I just
Oh man.
you got to, and then I'll roll into that. My son, who graduates from college, and he finally decides maybe I should go in the hotel business. The old man seems to be doing okay with it, and he had never he had the same opportunities that I did all summer long. He could have worked in hotels. I had 8 hotels where he grew up, and he never wanted to do it. He wouldn't want to work out on the docks, the fishing docks, and bars, and I said, fine. So he starts advertising, or he's living in the same town where he graduated from college, and he starts applying for jobs. He says, "Dad, nobody's calling me back." I said, "Well, what are you applying for?" "Well, management jobs, because I'm a college graduate." I'm like, that's not the way it works yet. And he finally took a job as a banquet setup person at a big Hyatt. And after he'd been there for a week, they learned that he had been a server's assistant or a busboy at a restaurant for one summer. So they started him serving, and then became started doing a banquet bartender, and then he moved to the front desk, and then he ended up in sales within a year. So
Wow. Within one year?
within 1 year's
That's
time,
incredible.
he moved up just because he had a good work ethic, and he did whatever they asked him to do.
Yeah.
And it's recognizable in our industry, and it's same in the fast food business. I mean, even if you start at McDonald's, you can quickly move up to shift manager. I mean, I know a lot of people that own fast food places that started working at them and eventually was able to purchase them.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in the hotel industry and anything else. You've just got to start at the bottom, learn, make mistakes along the way, certainly, but let's learn from those mistakes. And then you can, and now my son is a VP of ops for this company. And
No
he's,
kidding.
yeah,
Wow.
after 7 years, 6 years. Yeah.
And that's still not a long time. People they get so antsy. They 2 or 3 years, it's not happening. I got to launch. And if you're building experiences and you're surrounded by a good team, 7 years, that used to not be that long of time. I stay with a company
Mhm.
and you move up, but achieving a vice president role in that period of time is great.
Yeah. And again, in the industry, there are so many, like he's been doing a lot of revenue management and business analytics the last couple of years, which is way our industry's moving. I mean,
Mhm.
as you know, you book rooms differently today than you did 5 years ago, and certainly 10 or 12 or 15 years ago. So the fact that he's come up through that more analytics, business analytics side of things, I think helps him. And also with the PMS systems that are out there, with all the different technology that's available, I don't understand it. I mean, I could figure it out if I wanted to, but he picks it up
There's a
so
lot
much
there.
so quick that if a hotel has a problem, he knows how to address it. If a hotel has a problem, they call me. I'm like, let me get my son on
Let
the
me get
phone.
my. That's great. That's great. And I second the hard work. I had an opportunity. So you and I, we talked about this previously. We met out at a BiTech event, which
Mhm.
thank you to BiTech for putting on such great events. And I was in Binghamton. I was in Binghamton, New York. I was going to Broome Community College. Didn't know what I necessarily wanted to do, and I was working at the Binghamton Regency, and we found out that your group was actually managing the Binghamton Regency at the same time when I worked there. And then 20 years later, we're meeting at this event. I'm CEO of a tech company, and you know, CEO of now TPG Resorts. What a cool story to come full circle. But when I was at Broome Community College, I got into Coastal Carolina University down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Still didn't know what I wanted to do necessarily, but when I got my package letter, there was an $8,000 a year gap. I couldn't afford to go to the school. And I went to my family. I had a big family up in Binghamton, New York. No one would co sign a loan for me to go to school at Coastal Carolina. So my girlfriend at the time, her neighbor's friend's friend, says, "Hey, there's a guy in Myrtle Beach that we know, Brian Bailiff. He owns Sonic Drive-ins." So I give him a call. I said, "Hey, I got into the school, and there used to be, I don't know if it's still like this now, but if you go down and you work in a state like South Carolina for 1 year, you then get in-state tuition. So then I
Yes.
could actually afford to go there." So I go and work on the grill for $8 an hour. And I didn't have a I didn't have a bicycle. I certainly didn't have a car. I didn't have a radio, a TV, nothing. Just the clothes on my back. I go down. My bed pulls out of the wall, and I walk to work every day. And I work for 8 hours a day. I clock out, work for a couple of hours. I have no friends, don't know anybody down there. And then when I go home, I don't have anything to read. I bring the operations manual home. Within 3 months of doing this, just exactly what I said, but no distractions, no, hey, you want to go out? We're all gonna go catch a movie, or we're all gonna go to this bar. Do you want to join? I wasn't even 21 at the time anyway. Uh, Within 3 months, I'm the only person in this drive-in that knows how to take apart every piece of equipment, knows how to put it together. All of the guts stuff, all of the, hey, 3/4 ounce of lettuce goes on that, only 1/8 of an ounce of ketchup. And then get assistant manager and then assistant GM of my first store after 8 months of being down there, 20 years old, get into ownership, and at 21, build my first store from the ground up. And it's exactly what you're saying. Just literally hard work. I was not a fast food person. I would call my friends and do check-ins back in New York, and they go, "Oh, how's it going, Burger Boy, Fry Fella? You having fun flipping burgers?" I'm like, "Hey, I don't know what's going on. They moved me up to assistant manager," and they're like, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm just showing up to work with a good attitude, and just doing things a little different and soaking up the knowledge." And Brian Bailiff, who was my franchisee, was just an incredible leader. One of those people that when you're around, you go, "Okay, I'm going to put a lot of those, nuggets in my toolkit. I want those tools. So that's who I want to be." And even to this day, we're still good friends. I just was at his house a couple of months ago, down in South Carolina. Really great guy. But exactly what you're saying. Work hard, good things will come.
It is. It just you just you, it just a little bit of common sense. A little bit of common
Yeah,
sense.
indeed, indeed. Well, listen, we've got a couple more minutes here. A couple of things I did want to touch on. So, as a CEO of TPG, you've got a lot of moving parts. You've got the marinas, you got full service. You're probably always prospecting. What's the thing in your role that you worry most about? Not the old keeps you up at night, but when you're sitting there thinking, the thing that is the unknown or the uncertain, the thing that worries you.
Over promising and under delivering. It's
To hotel owners.
yeah, to the craft. I mean, when we take over a hotel, typically there's something wrong with it if we're being hired.
Hmm.
So and sometimes the owners aren't always 100% upfront about what's wrong with it. So
Hmm.
we get in and then we start battling through and sometimes there's some things that are just out of our control, even though that we know how to fix them. Sometimes you just can't fix them. Sometimes there's things that have happened, whether it's a financial issue or some lawsuit issues or some other things that you say you can do it, but sometimes you can't.
Hmm.
And that keeps me up at night. Because I'm extremely confident, and I'm extremely confident in our team. But sometimes, I mean, my COO dropped dead 2 Thanksgivings ago, you know, totally out of the blue.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
And,
remember you telling me.
and then when you lose somebody like that, how do you backfill? I mean, he had been with the company almost 40 years. So those
Yeah.
are things
Devastating.
that you've got to be able to pivot. Um, and when you've made promises and have people put their trust in you, and then you can't deliver them, it's terrible. Now 9 times out of
Yeah.
10, I figure out a way to fix it, but there's that one time that it doesn't work out, and it's it's not fun.
I mean, not just the passing of the COO, but in the heat of the moment like that, when something goes crazy, you find out about something, lawsuit, something like that. What do you have for the younger audience as well? Do you have like a framework or some type of decision making? How are you able to just prioritize your thoughts and take the next best step forward,
So
not freak out?
what I always do is, if you ask me a complicated question, or a question that requires a little more than just a yes or no, I'm going to take time, and I'm going to think how my decision is going to affect not only tomorrow, but a year from now and 5 years from now. So
Wow.
I tend to be almost, I'm not very good at chess, but it's like a chess move. So you make a
Hmm.
decision based on what's going to be best for the hotel, the hotel's ownership, but also for the management and the staff. And a lot of times people sometimes will get a little upset with me because I do take a little bit of time to answer, but it's because I'm thinking of all the possibilities. Um,
That's pretty considerate. I actually don't find that to be the case with all people that we talk to. That's incredible.
right. Because again, you got to live with your decisions. And
Hmm.
I was a history major in college. I mean, we learn from our mistakes. As and I mean, I frustrated. I went to a school where they were thinking about changing the name because they were upset with the history, and they were trying to rewrite history, and they were
Mm.
trying to change history. You can't do that. We learn from our mistakes. And the people that learn the best are the ones that excel the most. But you
Yeah,
have to make them. If you don't make mistakes, you're never going to be successful either. You can't, there's nobody that's perfect 100% of the time.
absolutely. I often say that about not our employees, other folks is you're going to learn a lot more by failing. I hope you fail. I hope you fail quietly, small. I hope you fail cheap. I hope you fail forward. That sort of in the comfort in, like you said, or me, in my drive-in, messing up here and there, but like it's not a catastrophic failure. And I will communicate to team members, there's nothing that you can do that's going to tank our company. So try things, fail. You're going to learn more from these micro failures than you will, a success that you don't know really why it happened. Was if it's selling hover or something. Well, that client had that need and they reached out to us, and that was going to happen anyway. But learning from those failures is certainly how we intend to continue to grow the talent density.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Fantastic. What's a daily routine that you cannot live without?
I actually do not have one. I've had them over the years, but some of them turned out to be unhealthy, and like like my for years my breakfast was a Slim Jim and a can of Pepsi.
No way.
I didn't eat
when did
breakfast
when did
food.
you when did you throw that one out?
Oh, that got thrown out a while ago. Now I have one
Oh
Pepsi
man.
a month, and I still eat
Yeah.
a bunch of beef jerky, but that's not for breakfast anymore. Uh,
Man, working at Sonic, I that was my Diet Coke. I mean, you didn't see me without one nearby or right in the hand,
uh-huh.
and haven't touched the stuff in 10 years. It's crazy. Last one. What place on earth is the most peaceful for you? If you want to go, relax, unplug, where are you traveling to or going to?
I have my family bought a cottage on a lake in Western Maryland back in 1975, and it's called Deep Creek Lake. and that is my happy place.
Wow. Yeah, sounds beautiful.
Because I get up there and it just, as soon as you get into the mountains, and I live at the beach, but I never go on the beach. There's too many people on the beach, which is
Is
good
it
for
a
the hotel
pretty
business.
secluded place?
Yeah, well, I'm going to call it secluded, but it's easily accessible from DC, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Morgantown, West Virginia.
Oh,
But
gotcha.
it takes me 5.5 hours to get there from here. So once I get there, I like
Oh,
to
wow.
stay for a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got one of our big investors here at Hover. He's got a place in Lake Winnipesaukee, and he says as soon as he crosses from Boston, up north, as soon as he goes out of Massachusetts, he goes, his blood pressure goes down
Yeah.
immediately. It's his happy place.
We've got hotels on that lake.
Oh, awesome!
I haven't
Fantastic.
been there, but I need to get there. I try to get to as
and Lake
many.
Winnipesaukee.
Yeah, I try to get as many of our hotels as I can. I find that even if I have nothing to do, just the people that work at the hotels are so appreciative that someone has taken time to come and see them and come and talk to them. And
Oh, yeah.
in this industry, you can't take anybody for granted. And especially if you're relying on them to be hospitable to the guests that's paying every one of our salaries.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, good. Well, Mike, really appreciate your time and joining us and your insights. Hope that everyone took a lot of value away. I know that I did. If there are any hotel owners who are looking to change management companies, can you give them a little bit about how they can reach out to you, where they can find you, more information?
Yeah, either my phone number is 410-749-8464, or my email address is Mikem at TPG Hotels and Resorts, the and is spelled out, .com.
Awesome. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Moments That Matter podcast. As always, if you enjoyed this episode or you want to leave a review, please follow us, and leave a review. We'd much appreciate it. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next one.